Michael Gomez, and I'm a real estate broker and an investor here in Nashville, Tennessee.
And I'm Seth Mosley, Grammy Award-winning songwriter and real estate investor.
We host a monthly meetup in Middle Tennessee for anyone who wants to build passive income, not only for retirement, but for today.
On the first Wednesday of every month, we bring in an expert from every area of investing to help you with things like finding deals, getting your financing locked in, asset protection, every kind of investing, so much more.
Our videos are all about delivering that content to you.
Go to musicandmoneyig.com for more info on our free monthly events. Hit subscribe on the page so you don't miss any awesome content, and hit that like button if you like it.
Don't let all the flair of my jacket distract you.
Here's the content.
I've invested in all kinds of weird real estate things, but I've never built a brand new house from scratch with the purpose of selling it and making a profit. So I met Roberto a few months back, and we connected, and man, he is a walking Bible. He's with Jackson Builders. He is Jackson Builders. No, I'm kidding. He's got a great team, and he's going to blow our minds today about telling us, he's going to break down deals. He's going to show us how to do this in an effective way, where to find deals, financing, and ultimately even make a profit. So put it together for our wonderful guest this morning, Roberto Gutierrez.
Testing. All right. Oh, good call. All right. Oh, wow. I didn't realize you were going to put this picture of me up here. Nice. So thanks for being here this morning to listen to me speak. I'm born and raised in Nashville, and I've been investing in real estate since 2015, once I got out of college. So I've been working on development for going on 4 years now, and I've learned a lot of different lessons. I've got a few slides for you that they'll probably just barely scratch the surface on development, but hopefully you can leave here knowing some things about some smaller developments, knowing some other things about stuff that tends to be a little bit larger. I don't claim to be an expert, but I do have a pretty good pulse on how to navigate Nashville. So these are a couple houses that we just wrapped up over in North Nashville, so those are ours. But I wanted to talk about a few different things. Due diligence, which is really important, what we kind of look for during acquisitions, financing, and then also actually share a case study with you on a recent deal that we just exited. So first thing, I've got due diligence and acquisition. And something that's important to note is that due diligence and acquisition can really vary widely on different deals, right? If you've got an HPR deal, which is horizontal property regime, what you see around Nashville with all the tall and skinnies, there's much less that goes into building 1 or 2 units than goes into building 3 or more. There's a whole different permitting process, but a lot of the same things still apply. There's just more you have to look at when you're building more. So I won't read off this directly, but you've got to go check with zoning, got to make sure that your property is zoned for what you want to do. You could rezone, but obviously there's some risks to that. You check things like height restrictions, floodplains. You check if there's any easements, basically if there's anything that's going to impede on your footprint, setbacks, infrastructure on the lot, right? Do you have sewer and water running to it? Do you have electrical service there? So there's a lot of different things to consider, and then also acquisition. So what's helped us out a lot in Nashville is just making it smaller. So we mainly focus on North Nashville, Buena Vista and Bordeaux to be exact. So some really small submarkets, but that's allowed us to become an expert and be able to vet deals very quickly and also be really efficient with our operations, because we're developers, but we're also contractors, so we do build for some people. But we also have plenty of projects that we have equity in or we have partners on. And I don't really like rules of thumb, and note that I put in Nashville and the specific areas we're building. We try to get a land for 20% of the exit price of the house that we're going to be selling. So if you come across a deal where you've got a tear down or even a vacant lot and it's pretty simple and it's ready to go, then I'm going to try to get that for 20%. If I'm working on a larger development that may require some site improvements, right? We got to bring utilities there, do a bunch of upgrades, then I'm going to want that entire total to add up to 20%. So it's all in before you break ground. So some of that stuff on the other page was more, well, it's relevant to any type of development, but here's some things that you really have to start thinking about when you're dealing with commercial. That's 3 units and up, or obviously a commercial building. You have to start thinking about things like fire access, right? If you've got a building that's over 30 feet tall, then the fire department has to bring out a specific truck that has a boom on it, right? And if you're doing a 10-unit townhome development that's got a couple different buildings that are stacked behind each other, it may be hard for them to get back there. So you have to start doing things like running driveways down the side or giving them access through an alley. But obviously, those trucks are huge. So you have to check with the fire marshal because things change. Currently, we're having to give 26 feet for them to access the property if we have something that's far off the street. So that's one thing to think about. And then you've got your height restrictions. On some commercial developments, you'll deal with the sky plane setback, which basically means that at the start of the property, you can only go X feet high. So I'll give you an example. We've got one that we can go 30 feet high, and for every foot back that we can go another 1.5 feet in height. So lots of things, you have to consider all this when you're planning, when you're designing everything. Then you've got your water and sewer lines. If you're putting 7 or 8 units where one was, then you may not have the capacity to supply those homes. So you've got to look into that, get flow tests. Another thing is the stormwater infrastructure. So it can really help you if Metro has catch basins and other stormwater infrastructure for you to put all the runoff stormwater into. But if you don't have that, then you have to get creative, right? And that's when you have to start doing things like infiltration testing your lot to see if it soaks up enough water for you to treat all your stormwater on site. And that's when you have to look into doing things like permeable pavers, rain gardens, retention ponds, all these different things. So I could go on and on about due diligence and what you have to look into, but I think what it really comes down to is having a good team. So if you get a good architect and you get what you pay for, I'm a strong believer because we've tried going the cheap route before and it didn't work out. But if you get a good architect, civil engineer, surveyor, and general contractor, then all these little things that I'm spouting off are a lot easier to control and a lot easier to get a handle on because you'll be working with people who are accustomed to looking into this and they've got their own list of checks and balances that they're going to look into. So that's due diligence, acquisition. Here's preliminary planning and design. So I've kind of laid out what a typical development project looks like. Again, it can vary widely, but first I've got, obviously you pick out your site and then you're going to need a survey. Then you're going to get with your surveyor or an engineer in the event that you need engineering, and you're going to do a preliminary site layout. After that, you're going to do site testing if necessary. For example, if your preliminary layout shows the runoff water going to a large retention pond, then stormwater is going to want to see evidence that the ground can actually retain what you're sending that way. Then you're going to have preliminary submittal codes. You're probably going to get some comments back, some remarks, and once you finally get through that, you can finalize your building footprint and your civil design. And from there, you can cut your architect loose, and they can work with the footprint that they've been given and ultimately submit to codes for permits, finalize your budgets, close on a construction loan. And all these steps aren't completely necessary if you're building 1 or 2 houses. But I think it's best to just prepare to do all this. And if you don't have to have a step, then that's great. Some of the smaller stuff may not require preliminary submittal. That's pretty much what I'm getting at. All right, so here's financing. And again, we could talk about this for hours as well, but really I wanted to touch on some of the soft costs that you have to take into account and also talk about the financing a little bit. I think it really comes down to relationships and it comes down to the project. For example, the 2 builds that we work on in Nashville, they're pretty simple. You can typically get a loan for 80% of the appraised value of your development. And assuming you buy right and you're building the right product there, then your total cost may be 80%. So most banks like you to have at least 10% of cost in. It's pretty hard to come across 100% of cost financing, but a lot of the smaller deals we work on, we are able to get in for 10% down. And when you start getting into some of the larger stuff like townhomes or commercial buildings, I think it's important to note on the front end with your partners what you're going to need to be shelling out for. So you've got your survey, civil engineer, architect, maybe a contractor deposit, and miscellaneous site testing, right? I'll give you an example. We're working on a 7-unit development on Jefferson Street that we are about to get to the permitting process, and I think we're a little over $100,000 in. It was about $8,000 for the surveys, $25,000 for civil engineer, another $30,000 for architectural, and then we had to get all kinds of different site testing done. So I think it's really important to budget for this stuff on the front end because it's not always as simple as just buying the land, and sometimes it does take some money up front to really see what you're going to be able to do. And there are some deals that come across where the seller's already done the work for you and they have the civil design, everything already complete. They're probably asking for a premium. That's why we haven't really found many of those deals that will work, because they tend to underestimate some of the other costs that go into it. But with all this, you can typically reimburse yourself. So you figure out all this, you figure out exactly what you're going to be building, and you pull together a budget, and you can roll all these costs into there. So typically, that's how we end up doing it. Once we close on our construction loan and we get our financing, we get reimbursed for all that. And with that financing, there's more than just the down payment. You're going to have to pull together your front-end closing costs, your title insurance, your origination fees, interest reserve for the project, and then also a contingency reserve. Depending on your bank, your draws may not always exactly match what your contractor's invoicing you for. There could be little lulls along the process to where their inspector maybe missed something. So just important to be well capitalized with these development projects, and because stuff happens, right? We've had plenty of issues. It's not the norm anymore, but when we were first getting started, I can give you a couple of examples actually. We had one project where we had a little stream buffer running through it, basically a ditch, and we tried to get by without touching it, right? We talked to stormwater on the front end, and they were like, as long as you don't disturb this, we're not going to make you do anything. So fast forward 5 months, we're wrapping up the houses, stormwater comes in and says, this has deteriorated more than we thought, and you're going to need to rebuild this thing, but it's going to need to be rebuilt out of concrete. And in order to do something like this, you need a grading permit, which requires a civil engineer, which requires a contractor that understands how to do that level of work. So probably $60,000 later, we got a concrete swale built that was 150 feet long, 8 feet wide, 2 feet deep. Somehow we ended up making like $5,000 on the deal, which I was happy we just didn't lose money. But that was early on, and I think that's a really good example of why you have to do your due diligence. We rolled the dice a little bit too much on that project, and knowing what I know now, if I saw any sort of water feature on the lot, I would have already went ahead and assumed that I needed a civil to design it on the front end, and I would have factored that into the purchase price. Another example of something you need for contingencies that happened to us would be fires. So a couple years back, we had an arsonist pay a visit to a few houses we had under construction. We had just finished framing. I should have put a picture of this on there, actually. Man, I'll show anyone who wants to see it after. But we just finished framing, windows, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and we were getting ready to start drywall. And someone came and doused both houses in gasoline, gasoline on the inside, and lit them up. So we had another development on a neighboring lot that actually caught fire as well. And obviously we had insurance, so we got paid back, but it was probably a 16-week process. And we had contractors that we had to pay in the meantime. So we were out close to $100,000 for that amount of time. So, we don't always set aside $100,000 contingency for the projects, but I think that's just a good example that shows that stuff can happen that it's hard to be prepared for. All right, next, got a case study here. I didn't write the actual address here, but I can give anyone the address if they want to drive by or look it up on the internet. But this is an HPR project. These deals are pretty simple. They don't typically require all the civil engineering. and all that extra design, and you can typically get by with a slightly cheaper architect here. So I got a little snippet from our spreadsheet over there that shows kind of how everything panned out on this project. But the gist of it is the total cost of the project was around $600,000. Our cost was around 80% of our appraised value, so we only had to bring 10% down. We had a little over 17 grand in interest, and we were able to roll in the closing cost on that loan. So that's why I don't have that outlined there either. So it's a little under 80 grand in, and the profit was around 75 grand. And this project took about 8 months. It was just over 1,600 square feet. We had these things listed and under contract within a few weeks. So these projects are pretty cut and dry, pretty simple for the most part for the HPRs. And I think the returns are pretty good. It was about 100% in 8 months, and it was a house in the mid-3s. So if we're doing stuff in the 5s, we definitely try to shoot for a little more profit per door. But this was pretty acceptable to us given the price of the house and the exposure. What else I got here? So just wrapping up, I just wrote mitigate your risk with any type of development. I think it's important to partner with someone who's done it before, and treat your partners right, treat investors right, and mistakes may be made along the way, but that's no reason not to try it.
Anybody here have some questions? And I will pass. Okay, here's one.
Hey, can I just ask you, is there such a thing? I've heard of a type of insurance called builder's risk.
Yep.
Do you know anything about that? And would that have paid for your people while the arsonist?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So did you have that in place?
Yeah, we get builder's risk insurance on every project we do.
Okay, could you explain it a little bit?
Yeah, for sure.
It'd be great.
Whether it's a new development or it's an addition we're doing for someone over in East Nashville, doesn't matter. We always get the builder's risk insurance, and every bank that we've dealt with requires it actually. We may close on a loan, but before they give us any of the money, any draws, they're gonna say, we need to see your certificate of insurance. So yeah, we work with a local insurance agent, and we get a policy for what we think the total cost of the house is gonna be. So in that example, that was over on Pecan Street in North Nashville. We had a $200,000 policy on all 3 of the houses. So we filed a claim, and we were able to get all the money back, and it was definitely worth it. I think we paid $350 for each of the policies. Had a $1,000 deductible, and we were able to get all the money back. Right, so
that's awesome.
Well worth the $350. Yeah.
I have a question. So let's say somebody has a lot and they want to hire you as a builder. Then what would the numbers be? Let's say you had a $74,000 profit on that particular example. Let's say somebody would have hired you to say, hey, here's the land. You be the builder. I'm putting all the money and all the financing. What would that look? First of all, is that something that you do? And second of all, what does that look like return-wise?
Yeah, for sure. So this is a good example of that. This is where we partnered up with someone. We do our own developments. We'll build for other people if they just want us to simply act as a contractor, or we'll partner with people. So again, the fee can kind of depend on the project and what goes into it. But with most HPRs, they're pretty cut and dry. We start around $25 a door. In this case, we discounted it 20% to $40,000 total, so $20 a door, and then we worked in an equity spot on the back end. So
wonderful.
We're willing to get creative, right? On this deal, the investor wanted us to do that, and what we ended up working out was actually a $40,000 preferred return to the person who was putting in the money, and then anything over 40 grand, we split 50-50. So I
love it.
Yeah, so we made a little more money than we would have just building it outright. But we waited until the end to reap all the benefits of that.
And the investor got financing. You guys didn't have to deal with financing.
Exactly. Yeah. And we handled it all. They showed up and they signed the loan, put money in, and then they showed up and signed the sale documents. But that was about it, right? So they just put in that money. So yeah, the investor on this deal made 40 plus half of the other 34, 57. Yeah, 57 on there. 77.
That's not bad. Give me some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, we got one.
I have a question about, well, first of all, let me address the builder's risk. I'm an insurance agent. So, it is, whenever you do a builder's risk policy, it's based on the total cost of the labor and materials. So Tom, you have to provide plans on what the total square footage of the home will be, how much the cost of the materials, and you have to factor in the labor, and that's what your policy is based on. So I have a question on the build costs per square foot. I mean, that seems a little low or aggressive, the 107. My question is not, I'm just curious how, when you're dealing with materials, are you leaving it up to the contractor, or what type of materials, or is it quality materials to build houses that are as quick as, what I'm trying to say is, are you trying to get to the finish line to get everything completed on the project, or are you looking more from a quality standpoint? I'm just curious about that aspect.
Yeah, I think there's a few elements to that question. I'll try addressing them. So first off is the build cost per square foot. That's something that's going to vary widely. And also keep in mind, people aren't always talking apples to apples, depending on the contractor that you ask. Because there is this as well, there's the builder's fee, right? But we typically don't factor that in right here. We just have it as another line item so we can see what the base cost is for the house. In this example, we were able to hit $107 a foot. It's definitely quality materials. It's what the standard is for a house in this price range. And we're able to just get creative with some of the builds, and if you have the right lot, you can save some money. So how we did it on this one is it's a relatively flat lot, so we used a monolithic slab on grade foundation, so we didn't have to have footers and block. It was just a straight slab of concrete, and since there wasn't much of a slope, it wasn't a ton of concrete, right? So what that helps you with, if you look at this house, is there's a lot of things that you don't have to deal with. Here's steps on the exterior. We don't have to build a wooden deck. We don't have to add steps to get up to the front door or the rear door. And then inside, I should have put some inside pictures up. We kept the floors concrete. So we just used a polished concrete floor, which cost us about $4 a square foot. And the engineered hardwood right now is costing us about $6 a foot installed. Obviously, sand and stain is a little more. So you can see between the foundation and the flooring, we're saving a lot of money there, as well as steps, decks, doing things like that outside. And there's plenty of other ways that we save money through fixtures and heights and various things of that nature. On this project, this was something that was really expensive, the stone, but we had some stone left over from another project, so it was free to us except for the labor in this case. But yeah, this was a good one. Our average is probably closer to 110 a foot for this type of product in the 17 to 2,000 square foot range, heated and cooled, of course.
So normally it costs about $140, $150 a square foot per residential home. Is that correct?
Well,
I think I'm factoring in the builder's fees and everything like that.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, I guess if you took the 20 grand builder's fee on this 1,700 square foot house, it's another $11 a foot. So in this case, it's probably closer to 120, not 140 or 150, but it can easily get there, right? We're doing a build in Green Hills that is at that price point. Another thing is the windows. These are white vinyl windows, builder grade. Probably the most basic thing you can find. I mean, they're fine, they're ply gem windows, but you switch to black vinyl windows, it's twice the cost. You start getting into metal windows and all that, then it just shoots up. So we can easily get it there to 140 or 150 if we want, but it just all depends on the price point. And at mid threes, you're still able to get people coming in with the FHA loans or the low money down conventional loans that they're putting 3 or 5% in. So most people in that case they're happy to get a house. So it's not like we're putting anything we can find in there, but it's just basic stuff, right? A polished concrete floor, no carpet, engineered hardwood, and we're not using tile crazy mosaic tile, right? It's like subway tile in the guest bath, and the master bath we might get something a little bit nicer. But yeah, that's pretty much the formula.
Hey man, quick question. With Buena Vista seeming to be extremely popular right now for developments, are you finding it harder to find land to meet those minimum numbers you're talking about in terms of lots?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely always a challenge. That's probably the biggest challenge to us is finding qualified deals. It's gotten pretty simple to pull together money as we've built more of a track record and made investors money. But we've had pretty good success with it. If I think about it, we've probably locked up 5 or 6 deals in the past 5 or 6 months. So we're probably picking up about 1 a month, and that's all off market, all through relationships and networking. We just have a few wholesalers who are pretty familiar with the area, as we are, and we tell them, hey, look, if you can get an HPR lot around 80 grand a pad, so 160,000, most likely we can make it work. We've got to go look at the lot first. Don't send me something that has like an 80-degree slope and think that that's going to work for us. But look at these few things, and if it passes the test, then send it our way, and we'll get it done. And anytime that someone brings us a deal that meets those criteria, we're quick to pull the trigger, and also always try to close. So I think that's worked to our advantage, that the people over in the area that control those deals typically can bring them to us and know that we're gonna get it done. And we already told them the price we need it at, so they can factor that into their negotiation with the seller, and they can make whatever fee they want.
That's great. So I used to tell wholesalers, I'm like, hey, you don't need a buyer's list. Any deal that makes sense, I'll buy from you.
Yeah, we tell
and
them.
And then 2 remain in the whole time.
Right. Yeah, that's what we tell them. We're
question?
like, just send everything to us.
You have a question?
I have a question. So my question is, and maybe this could be an offline question, but different from the ground up builder. Questions for real estate agents who are helping clients buy a home for an investment, and the things you look at for price points, resale, if it's a flip, the kind of numbers, maybe just a few of the numbers you look at to determine if it's good for someone who's on the very low end and not that experienced, but we're trying to look at the important general things. What are the first factors that need to go into someone buying an investment property when they're an individual buyer?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of factors. If you're talking about new construction, to be honest, at least personally, I don't think within Nashville's urban core that new construction is the best investment for someone who's looking to get into like something from a pure rental standpoint. But I think there's a lot of other factors to consider personally, right? If you look at buying versus renting, and the chance of appreciation occurring. But yeah, I mean, if someone came to me and they were wanting to buy a new construction house for investment purposes, then I would try to get something probably 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I think there's a good rental market for that size home, and an up and coming area like North Nashville in particular. North Nashville's got a ton of new residential there, and Buchanan Street and the other commercial streets going through it are just now starting to pop. There's a couple things there, and all the lots are getting snagged up. So I think in the next few years, you're going to see a lot more commercial there. You're going to see people walking around, and you're going to see the prices to continue to rise. So yeah, if I had to give someone advice, if they really wanted something new construction, then I would say get something in the mid 3s if you can, near town, in an area that's changing.
I would say this. I would recommend anybody that if I have a client of mine that says, hey, like every now and then I get somebody, I want to flip houses in Nashville. I'm like, I'm not your guy. It's just that ship sailed. I would recommend them investing in new construction. I think it's more predictable. I think it's more, you can control it more. The appraisal can be more in control.
Yeah.
Like everything, you would have more control opposed to like finding a house, renovated, hoping that it's going to appraise.
Yeah.
Like because we're going to list as high as we can.
Right.
And this seems like a way better type of situation, honestly.
Yeah, actually, you made me think of another point too. What we do is some people, we work with some clients that build new construction to hold as rentals, right? So you can get in a lot cheaper that way. I'm surprised I didn't think about that at first, actually. So we work with a guy that we've built a couple of units similar to this, and he just keeps it. He's in it for cost, which may be for something like this maybe around $300,000, right? So they're in it for maybe 80% of the value, and then they can get a loan on it, and maybe they could live in one and rent out the other, or just hold both as rentals. I don't think that, at least here in Nashville, holding something like this as a rental may cash flow couple hundred bucks a month, but in the long term, the only reason that's cash flowing at the start is because you don't have any maintenance. You're deferring all your maintenance on something like this for 8 to 10 years, and then once the first thing hits, probably wipe out a lot of the cash flow. But I mean, some people like to do it. It's not I wouldn't necessarily advise it, but it works for some people. They get a little bit of cash flow, and then they look at Nashville and they say, over the next 10 to 15 years, I'm comfortable with the fact that I'm getting debt pay down on this, and I'm pretty sure that over the long term, I'm going to have some appreciation. But, I think that play really works well for someone that already has a lot of wealth. Like the person that we're building this stuff for probably has a $10 million net worth. So if he's putting a few $1 million to work and he can see that he's making 5 or 6% on it a year, I think he's all right with that. And that may not be as great for someone getting started.
Hello. My question is more around like the HBR, like, and how you get zoned properly for that, because I know in East Nashville they're trying to kind of shy away from HBRs, and do you see that in North Nashville, or is it still pretty strong?
It's pretty simple. So I should put this on a slide too, but the HPR process is very cut and dry, and that's why I like the 1 and the 2 builds, because they're, in most of the case, they're already entitled for what you want to do. Even if you come across an RM lot or a commercial lot, in theory, in a commercial lot, you can do whatever you want, but then you look at all these overlays, right? It's like these overlays are going to prevent you from going as high as you want, as dense as you want. There's parking requirements, there's stormwater, there's this and that. But the HPRs are cut and dry. So all you have to look for in Nashville is if you've got R zoning. So RS is residential, single family, but the R, you got R6, that means 1 or 2 if you have 6,000 square feet. R8 is 8,000, 10,000, so on. So for the HPR, all you have to do is you have to see, like for R6, for example, which is what this lot was. We saw as an R6, it was 6,000 square feet. So then you get a survey done, you get your plans done, you lay them out on a site plan, which you're going to submit to codes for permits, and you also get your surveyor to create an HPR exhibit, which basically shows both of the proposed homes. It'll say Unit A, Unit B, and then it'll show all this, and it'll show what's a private element for A and B and what's a common element. So you can't see it well, but there's a parking pad back here, and it's connected. So that's a shared element for these people. So you get your HPR exhibit, and then you send it to an attorney. Pretty much any attorney in town is going to know how to do it, and they create a set of HOA. They create an HOA basically, and it's HPR covenants and bylaws, and it's pretty cookie cutter. It basically, it references the HPR exhibit, and it's an HOA, but it's very flexible. Typically doesn't have any fees, and once you sell the houses, the 2 new homeowners are, they're the owners of the HOA, and amongst themselves, if they want to set up some kind of escrow account and require there to be HOA fees, so 10 years down the line, they have the money to do any repairs to the parking or the sidewalks, they can do that, or they can just say, we're going to let this thing administratively dissolve and do it on our own. But it's just as simple as filing paperwork, in short.
I guess also the other question I have in part with that is, do you have any problems with the road frontage that you are required to have? Say, like, for instance, you have 100 feet on each side, like, of your property, right?
Yeah.
And you have to conform to that. Is there any issues with that?
Yeah, I mean, the shape of the lot can definitely impact your development. This lot right here was, I think it was a 50 by 140. So with the HPRs, and most of the lots in Nashville, you're going to have a 5-foot side setback, and in between the houses, you have to have 6 feet. So it basically eats into 16 feet of your 50 feet of width. So that's why we're able to do 17-foot wide houses. But we have come across lots where they're 40 feet wide and they're a couple 100 feet deep. So what we'll do, I should have put an example up here, but what we'll do in that case is we'll do a front to back build. And those actually do pretty well if you have the right lot. So we've had front to back builds where we put one house on the front, one house on the rear, and we have about 30 feet in between them. We put a parking pad for the front house off of the front, and then we have an alley in the back that we put parking for the rear house off of. And then it's an HPR, but they really don't share anything, and they don't feel like they're on top of each other as much. So that's how we get across the narrower lots. But I've also seen some people really botch those, where it's like they're 6 feet apart. There's windows looking right into the other one, and the rear unit doesn't have an alley. They all have to park in front of the front house, and then you see one of the houses move, and then those people are just stuck with that house in the back because people don't like it. So, but it can work well, and it gives you a much more flexible floor plan. And actually, in the past 12 months, the deals we've had that have made the most money are the front to back deals.
Hey, I was just curious. You said the 50-foot wide. That was you answered that one. Then I was just thinking in terms of, for instance, this project. Is this 6 months, 8 months? Is it 4 months? Roughly, what is the time frame?
Yeah. So this one was really quick, and it can vary. And I'll break it down for you. This project took, and you can go check the permit. It took 8 months from when we pulled the permit to when the homes were sold. So this was really, really quick. But in general, I'd say if you're ready to hit the ground running and you're working on an HPR, because the commercial stuff, you can easily get into 6 to 8 months of pre-development stuff before getting your permits. But for the HPR stuff, say you decide you want to buy a lot and you put it under contract, you call a surveyor that day and you say, I need a survey, when can you get this to me? And you call an architect and you look at it and you say, okay, the parcel viewer says it's 50 by 140, that might change a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and have my architect pull together plans for this. So then you have your plans and you have your survey within maybe 3 weeks, and you turn around your plans to your surveyor. In another 3 weeks, you could have your site plan and HPR. You record your HPR with the Register of Deeds. So within 8 weeks, if you really hit the ground running, you could submit for permits and have permits within a couple weeks. So you could get started in as little as 10 weeks if you want. And then we try to go for 6 months on the stuff like this for the construction time. And then obviously the sale time can depend. It could be, this case, it took like 2 weeks. It could take a month. It could take a little longer. It kind of depends. But dealing with codes can make things take a little longer. And there's a few things that can impact the project from a construction timing standpoint. We got lucky on this one. You can't see it here, but with HPRs in Nashville, you have to run underground electric. And you don't always get a lot that has an NES pole on it, right? You may have a pole, but it could be AT&T or Comcast. You might not have a pole at all. Or even if you have a pole, NES may say, this thing's old, I want you to upgrade the infrastructure. So you have to get with an NES engineer, and you have to get them to draw up a design to say if you're going to use the existing pole, if there's a new one going in, and where your trenches are going to run for your conduit, which they run to the middle in these. And you just have to manage the relationship with those guys, because we've had engineers that have taken 16 weeks to even submit a design. But luckily, the guy we know in North Nashville, we have so much going on there that he knows that he has to talk to us at least every couple weeks. So he's typically only taking a few weeks.
Okay.
But they can really delay you, because if they take 16 weeks to submit a design for a new pole, then you have to pay for it a week after. Then it takes 3 weeks for them to install it. So you can see you're at 20 weeks before you even have a pole. And then once you get a pole in, you have to trench, lay conduit. There's 3 different inspections before you can cover it up. So that's about a month. And then after that, you can do all your final grading, your sidewalks, your flat work, and your landscaping.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I wanted to know, because realistically, 8 months to a year is what you're thinking.
I just tell everyone expect a year.
Yeah.
And it typically doesn't take us a year. But yeah, I think that's a safe place to start. And I didn't include it on here, but we budget accordingly for the interest. We set aside at least 10 months of interest for any of our HPR projects.
Yeah, and as the project gets more complete, then the interest is, you're drawing more money, so you're paying more money. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On a
That's
project
good.
like this with current interest rates, when you fully drawn on the construction loan, you're looking at around $1,500 a month per unit in interest when it's complete.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Hey, just a quick question on the timing of the outlay of the investment. So when you're looking at you find the lot, you talked about putting 20% down with the bank and the financing. Roughly $100,000, I would guess. Do you put that down when you buy the lot, and then you start drawing back the building cost throughout the build, or is that about right, or how does that kind of flow so you don't run out of money and so forth?
Yeah, it depends, and what a lot of that depends on is who you're buying from, because you can close a construction loan that includes a purchase of the land or the tear down house that's there simultaneously. So, and Nashville is pretty competitive, but on all the deals that we get into, we try to say, because the banks, you're going to need to give them plans, a budget, and specifications for what the finishes are going to look like in the house. So our loan officers are able to get a construction loan closed for us in 30 days. I always try to expect 60. So I typically try to ask for a 60-day close. And, we come across a 50 by 150 lot, and we have a few floor plans that we've already used before, and we know we're going to put here. Maybe we're going to change up the front a little bit, but we already, we've done this before, so we already know what the budget's going to be. We know what the plans are going to look like, so we can submit that. So if you can get 60 days to close, then in some cases you can close on your construction loan and the purchase. And let's say the total cost, including land, is $650,000, and you have a favorable appraisal, then you can get by with putting in 10% of that total cost, $65,000, and then you maybe have another $5,000 of title and origination fees in there, and then probably set aside another 20 for interest. So that would be around 90. But in the event that you get a seller that's really hard to deal with and they need you to close in a couple weeks, then you could buy it cash. A bank can't fund that quickly in most cases though, or you can get hard money. So we've done that as well, where we have to just get a 60 or 90-day bridge loan where we put 25% down, and then once we're ready to close the construction loan, we'll bring the difference, right? So the bank may say, you've already got, like on this lot, it was like $150,000. If they say you've already got 37 in it, but to close this loan you need 65, you bring that other 30-ish to the construction loan closing.
Gotcha.
So that's so it can kind of vary. And then you mentioned about making sure you don't run out of money. I think it's always important to submit. We have an internal budget that we stick to, and we also have a bank budget that we send out that we usually probably add 10 to 15 grand per unit more than we think that we're going to need, because we don't want to ask an investor for more money, and we don't. So if we ever need more money for a deal, then we just float it. We just hold on to it, and at least with everyone that we work with who's investing with us, and we'll just say, look, cost an extra 20 grand, just give it to me whenever we close. But that's obviously with trusted partners, but that's kind of the way that we try to operate. But if you budget a little more, hopefully you don't have to do that.
Great, thanks.
I got a couple more questions. So when somebody invests with you, is an LLC created? How do you guys set up that deal where there's an investor that's a passive investor, but has equity, obviously, because he's signing the loan, yada, yada. So how do you guys do it?
We've done it a few different ways, but I'll give you a couple examples from HPR projects. We've created an LLC before where, let's say we bring in an investor and they're bringing the money and they're also signing on the debt. What we'll do in a lot of cases is we'll be a member of the LLC, but we'll be less than 20%, and we'll make the investor 80% or more. And what most banks will let you do in that case is they'll let the minority partner remain a partner of the LLC without being a guarantor of the construction loan. So, then we legally do own part of it, and then it's kind of silly you have to do all this sometimes, but I get it, and we'll write into our operating agreement at the end, we'll say we're going to have a disproportionate allocation of profit and loss, right?
Yeah, because the lender, if you're more than 20%, they're going to want everybody's finances.
Yeah. And that, and it comes down to relationships. We've been able to do that because we've got some really good loan officer contacts, but if you know the person well and they know there's no funny business going on, then they're probably going to be fine with that. And we've also had other instances where we didn't want to fool with creating an LLC. The person may have already had one, and what we'll do in that case is we'll just sign a joint venture agreement, which probably isn't as strong legally, but ours has been drafted by a reputable attorney. It's been looked over attorneys multiple times, so there has to be an element of trust to it. So
Of course.
that's the easier way to do it, with just a joint venture agreement.
That's great and very smart. What banks would you consider friendly for this type of new construction loans and things like that?
I think local community banks, definitely not any of the national banks. We like Franklin Synergy, and we also like First Citizens National Bank. We've worked with Simmons before as well. So I think, but most of the banks around here have pretty similar terms for the construction loans, I've found. But those are my top three.
Okay. I have a question. There is an area called Glencliff or whatever that's really hot, and there is a lot of construction, and we had put a bid on a house to be tear down, which was actually, I think, in R10, which was designed, they were putting two houses,
Yep.
one in front of the other, and we put the asking price, and we landed, losing it because it sold for like 15,000 above. And we heard through the grapevines that people from California, investors who don't know really, and they overpay, and they are really competing with the local people. So how true is that, in terms of what you found out?
We see that happening a lot. That's why, when we see deals come across on the MLS specifically, land deals or teardowns over in our area, we'll throw in a bid, but probably 9 out of 10 times someone's paying more than us. Yeah, they may be paying closer to 30% for the exit price, right?
Right.
So if they think they can comfortably sell a house, so if we think we can comfortably sell a house for $400,000, we're probably trying to get in for 80 a pad. But you may have some people who are bullish who are coming in for 100, 110, 120 a pad, and it's just I know how the numbers look, so I guess they're just rolling the dice. And I've spoken to a few people that have taken that strategy, and they just basically look at it and they say, the area's appreciating. I'm going to be able to sell this house for 6 or 7% more in a year, and it's just a more risky strategy. I've seen it work, but that's not how we try to operate.
Okay, so another question is that for future reference for us is that for that, in average, those old homes are like under 1,200 square feet and they're built in the 50s, whatever. What's the average price of a tear down of a property like that overall?
If it's like vinyl siding, no stone or brick, I'd probably budget $7,000. If you've got a brick or stone home that's going to have a little more to it, then probably closer to 10.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. And our demo contractor is Patriot Demolition. If you ever need a quote from someone, that's who we use.
Oh, really?
He's a good guy.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I love your accent.
Thank you.
All right. How about one more question if anybody has it? If not, we're going to wrap it up. And anybody? Yeah? 1, 2? Yes, one more. Allison, my dear friend. Here we go.
Some exercise.
There you go.
Hey, I just am wondering what advice you would give to an investor considering buying a lot so that they can get the highest and best use for that property. What steps do they need to take? So say you put it under contract, is there a way to do the due diligence before you sign the contract? Or how much money are you looking at putting out that you may not get back if you...
Yeah, we always write inspection periods into our contract. So we try to get one or 2 weeks of due diligence. And on an HPR lot, that's typically all you need to go down to codes and talk to zoning, stormwater, public works, look over a few things, and it can really help if you kind of know what you're going to do and you have an example, or even it could be a rough sketch on a piece of paper, and you could say, this is exactly what I want to do. Not only do I want to put 2 houses here, they're going to be positioned like this. This is where I want my parking. Anything you see here that's going to hinder me from doing this is a good way to approach the due diligence there. But you also asked about basically figuring out the highest and best use for the lot. I mean, if are you talking about like a rezone? So
yes,
so for a rezone, you've definitely got to know some people. I think you need to talk to planning, and you also need to talk to the council member in the area. And then you also need to look at the lot, and you need to see what's all around it, right? So if you're looking at a residential lot that's surrounded by residential homes, chances are you're probably not going to get that rezoned to commercial. But if you're near the end of a street and you've got a commercial lot, you've got your lot, and then you've got a residential lot, then maybe you can make that argument that you're kind of just continuing the commercial. So I think it starts with talking to planning, saying you want to do something here, are they open to the idea, and then talking to your council member and getting council member support. Because if you're going to get a rezone done in Nashville, I think the fee right now is $3,000 for the application. It's non-refundable, and it takes at least a few months. And if you need some help figuring out highest and best use, then I think that's when a good architect and a good civil engineer come into play. So our architect, we can go to him and we can pay him, and he pulls together a preliminary design and lays out what he thinks would work best there.
I love it. Well, last question. Somebody is wanting to invest and say, hey, we want to get you and Jackson Builders to, like, is that something that you guys are doing? You're actively seeking for people to come out and say, hey, I got $100K sitting here, take my money.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone who's wanting to invest in a project, obviously I'm going to sound a little biased, but I think we have a good track record, and we always recommend that people that want to invest with us talk to some of our investors. We have references, so if you're interested in getting into a project with this, then you should give me a shout. Even if it's not me, you should definitely talk to a contractor that has done some similar projects. So
I always say, every time I see a piece of land, I'll like email him. I'm like, what can I build here? So and he'll respond to you. It's like, hey, this is not a good lot. He'll be like, 9 times out of time, he'll say, I already seen that lot, and it sucks. So put it together for Roberto. Thank you so much. So much knowledge and transparency, which is great. So.
Hey, thanks for learning with us today on the show.
We would love to meet you at one of our free monthly meetups in Middle Tennessee.
Hit the thumbs up button if you like the content. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing on this channel.
Check out another awesome investing video here.